G'day.
Good day to
Welcome
you.
to G'day. I'm David Applegate, author of the book The Boyhood Arcade, Book 1 in Empire of Elves, and welcome to Future Fantasy Empire. Today with me is Paul Stanton, author of
A Festive Juxtaposition.
my notes just crashed. Notebooks just crashed.
Don't worry, I can tell you.
Yep, go ahead. Introduce yourself while I bring back my notebook.
Okay. Hello,
We're
everybody. Yes,
having
my name
lots
is
of fun
Paul
today.
Stanton. I live in London, and it's not really my debut book, because the book in question, although it's just been published by publishers in London, Austin Macaulay. But I do have other books on Amazon, and I've been sort of putting books on there for a few years. But what we're talking about today is ostensibly A Festive Juxtaposition, which was published at the end of November of last year.
Right. And when did you realize you first wanted to be a writer?
Well, curiously enough, it goes back to when I was at school. I would be about 15. And our English teacher, a lovely woman by the name of Mrs. Thomas, who is probably long deceased, she set everybody the task of writing an essay. And I wrote this essay, which I was sort of suitably proud of, because I was writing upon a topic of which I was fairly conversant, paleontology. And anyway, I sort of submitted this essay, and following week it was all handed back. And then the first thing I noticed, that she'd written across the top of this essay, pompous, in large red lettering, and then she'd put a ring all the way around it. And when I turned over, she'd written right at the bottom of the essay, imagination without the power to express it. And that hurt. That really hurt. And it sort of stuck in my core ever since. So effectively, what I did after that, I went and bought the Webster's Universal Dictionary, which had over 500,000 entries. And I read it from beginning to end, the whole dictionary. And then I made notes as I went. There were various words which they appealed to me. So I kept a notebook. And then I started collecting books. And at one point, I'd be about 17 or 18. I had approximately 1,000 books in my bedroom, of which I'd read most of them. And my mother, she had a fit. So she asked me to give about half of them away, which I did. But that was the initial spark, if you like. This is what prompted me to start writing. And then, of course, like everybody else, I started putting pen to paper. My early efforts were absolutely dire. I wrote children's books. I wrote plays. I got people to read them, and they weren't overly impressed. But it was a case of just sticking at it. You learn as you go. It's a learning curve. I mean, I don't have to tell you. So that's precisely what I did.
Yeah.
But the upshot being is, if this lady was still alive and I met her in the street, I would tell her what I thought of her.
Thank you for the inspiration.
Yes, and she got to the ground.
Yes. Tell us more about a festive juxtaposition.
Okay, well, I've been writing a number of things, and generally I write for my own pleasure. Since I've been on Twitter, which is only for about 3 months, I've had various organizations get in touch and said, oh yeah, we'd love you to come and write now for me for money. And then I think, well, it's all very well accepting that, but ultimately, especially in my time of life, I write what suits me, what I want to write, not what other people, irrespective of how much you get paid for it. I mean, this is a hobby which I love and have loved for many, many years. So the story behind Festive, somebody suggested I read a book by a Russian guy, I think his name, or I don't know where he was. I think he was from Eastern Europe, called Bulgakov, and the book was called The Master and Margarita. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a very well-known book. And it's about one day the devil appears in Moscow. But the character is rather more sanguine than my character, and he causes chaos and mayhem and bloodshed throughout the whole of the book. So I sat down one day and I thought, well, I could turn this into a short story. But then I thought, I want to include something in this novel, something which appeals to me, which, if you like, something which I absolutely love. And I thought, well, there's London. You know, I live in London. I've lived in London for 40 years. I absolutely adore London. I mean, its history, I mean, everything it stands for. And I thought, well, we'll set it at Christmas. And then what we will do is add the juxtaposition, which is the devil. So the devil in my book arrives on Charing Cross Station on Christmas Eve. And then through the course of Christmas Eve, just a few hours, he meets a series of dispossessed people, down and outs, people who are living rough, people with problems. And he sort of deals with all these problems in his own sort of inimitable fashion. Now, I won't give too much away, but this is what the juxtaposition is about. The devil at Christmas being a Christian concern, if you like, and there's the devil and everything he stands for, and he's doing things maybe you wouldn't expect, but in order to find out more, you'd have to read the book.
Yes. That makes perfect sense, because we're here to entice, not spoil. Now, when you write, what research did you do for your book?
Well, with this particular one, because I needed to know more about the history of London, I managed to get hold of a load of books called, the one was called London Law, and it goes back hundreds of years. And then I've got various, like Bizarre London, and they give you snippets of information which ordinarily you wouldn't come across. Like, for instance, if you step out of Charing Cross Station and then you turn left and you head about 200 yards towards Trafalgar Square, there is a statue of a man on a horse, on a plinth, which ordinarily hundreds of thousands of people go past every day and they give no thought to. But just to the right of that, there is a small circular piece of metal set into the pavement. There's no plaque with it, but that actually represents the very center of London. So when you're there, you know,
marker.
Yeah, you are right in the middle of London. And it's little things like this which the devil picks up on and he sort of elaborates on in the book. So what it does, I think, it gives the book depth. But just coming back to your previous question, I set off writing this as a short story. And then I reread it and then added it, so that, if you like, the whole piece become augmented. And then I reread it and then rewrote it. And then after 15 rewrites, I got up to about 187 pages. And I thought to myself, I cannot physically make this any better. I thought it's as good as I can do it. It was polished and repolished and repolished until it got to the stage I thought, if I polish it anymore, it's going to become tarnished. So anyway, I just sent off the first 3 chapters to Austin Macaulay, and they got back to me literally within the space of about 3 weeks. And they said, yeah, we like this. Could you send the rest? And of course, after you've had 40 years of being rejected, everything you do, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're writing children's book, adults book, it doesn't matter what genre you're writing in. I mean, I've written stage plays, film scripts, and then you send them off, and then invariably you hear nothing, or if you do hear something, it's just say, you know, reluctant, we're at this particular moment in time, we can't take this any further. And you get numb to it after a time, and you begin to think to yourself, well, there's no purpose in going down this road any further, because you get fed up of the knockbacks. And it's a bit like being made redundant, of which I was made redundant 4 times, and you never get used to it. And it seems to become more and more painful each time it happens. So I just sent this off, and I thought, I didn't think it would be accepted, because you don't. And anyway, I sent off the rest of the book, and within about 6 weeks, they got back and they said they absolutely loved it. And you sort of do a double take and you think, is that right? So anyway, I said, great. And anyway, they published it. And of course, as far as I was concerned, I thought, great, I'm published. This is the be all and end all. Now I can crack on with the sequel. And of course, nobody actually gives you a blueprint and tells you that once you're published, that is the first minor hurdle you have to get over. And of course, you then have to start promoting it. And they start talking about social media platforms. And at the time, I wasn't on any social media platforms like Instagram or Facebook, Twitter or TikTok or all the others that go with it. And I was absolutely horrified because I'm very much a technophobe. I have trouble working my phone. And no doubt, I mean, people come along and they say, what are you trying to do? And I say, I'm just trying to do this. So they take your phone and they do this. And they say, it's simple, but I can't do it. And you could show me 1,000 times and I still cannot do it. So it's a constant problem for me, this social media. So I had to get people to show me things about Facebook and how do you sort of put things on so people will be interested. And then I have a really lovely niece who she said, no, you need Twitter. And I said, well, I know nothing about Twitter. I've never even heard of it. And anyway, she said, well, I'll set it up for you. So she did. And she put all the details on, links and everything, which I like standing there shaking my head thinking, this is unbelievable. You know, this girl's ability. But to the younger generation, it's just easy. But to people of my age, it isn't. So anyway, since then, I've been adding to it on almost a daily basis, tweeting, retweeting, posting things. And I'm finally getting to grips with it. But as I say, the promotion side of it is something which really has taken me by surprise, because I get in touch with my publishers and say, well, how things are going? And they say, well, we don't really know. We won't know until August when you get your first royalties.
The first audit's quarterly.
Yeah. Well, it's 8
audit.
months, and then it's every 6 months. But I said, can you tell me how many bookshops my book is actually in? And they get back and they say, well, we haven't got that information. I said, well, if you don't know, who does? And they said, they constantly use this word, which I've come to loathe, and that's pitch. They say, oh, we pitch it to all these people, all of these buyers from the likes of sort of Water.
That's their skill. That's their skill.
And you think to yourself, well, it's all very well saying you're pitching it, but how many people have the opportunity to walk into a book? And this is what really sticks in my craw. If you walk into a bookshop and you see a book and you pick it up, you like the cover, you turn it over, you read the blurb, you know if it's for you or not. If it isn't, you put it back and then you pick something else up. But if your book is actually not on that shelf in the first place, people don't know about it. They don't know about you, and they don't know what the book is offering. And this is where, as I say, it really sticks in my craw, because it's been an enormous shock to the system, and it's been a terrific learning curve. The fact that once you are a published author, unless you're very well known, and people are waiting for your next book to come out, like, you know, James Michener or J.K. Rowling or any of the others, you know that you're not going to get a look in. And it's frustrating.
The frustrating part, I know, yeah. The frustrating part is the waiting, because you don't know.
Yeah, and nobody knows. I mean, I've not only written the Festive Juxtaposition, I've done the sequel, I've done the sequel to the sequel, I've done the sequel to the sequel to the sequel, and I'm currently on the 5th book, which I've just started, but I don't have time to write because I'm spending almost every spare minute I have trying to promote this. Yeah, and it's a catch-22 situation. You either do or you don't. I mean, I'm very, very fortunate in so much that I've got this company, Zemi Productions, which arranged all this. And the people there are absolutely phenomenal. I mean, what they've done for me, I mean, is you couldn't even begin to describe. And they brought me, you know, to so many hundreds of thousands of people, and you just keep your fingers crossed and just hope that all these people who are viewing it will actually buy a copy. But of course, you don't know. You just don't know. And this is, you know, you play the waiting game. But we shall see. We shall see.
Yeah, they found me on Twitter, and hopefully those people now watching will subscribe and share your video, and hopefully stay subscribers, because it's not just it's a game. I know what you mean. I was approached
We're all
by a
in the
rather
same boat.
yes, we are. I was approached by a large agency with I think Macaulay Austin is also owned by the same company that owns Penguin, I think, aren't they?
Is it? I have no idea.
I know I'm not sure either. But
it's an ongoing.
But in order for me to have gotten a publishing deal, they said, "Oh, you need 400,000 followers on Twitter, you know, because we're not offering small deals."
So, I don't think Elon Musk has got that, has he?
No, he's got millions, but you know, I think that was just a ballpark figure. You know, basically, your social media presence is too small. Lift your game, because here's the problem with promoting a book, and they spend a few hours complaining it. It doesn't matter how much they like it. Doesn't how much their test audience likes it. If you can't break through that invisible barrier called the audience, where you're on stage, you can't see the audience. You don't know whether they like it or not, and you don't know. And with any show, you've written a play, you know, it doesn't matter how well you do on opening night. You've got 13 more days, and that's it. You know, a play is only up there for 2 weeks. You know, a movie's only got 40. Well, a movie's got 45 days and a much more appeal than a So yes,
who would be a writer?
Yeah, who wants to be a writer when you're not even? Who wants to be a writer when your $1 billion movie only pays you $70,000?
Somebody, I mean, I know various people. I mean, they said they're going to send it off to Twitter, and you think, oh, wonderful, and then you start sort of thinking about it too much, and you start losing sense of reality, and then you try and bring your feet back down to earth. But you know, you think it would be great. I mean, I've had a fair amount of feedback on Austin and Amazon. And one or two people have said they'd love to see it made into either a series for Christmas or a movie. And, you know, I keep saying, I mean, when I first wrote this, I kept seeing David Tennant as the devil, because he's like tall, lean, iconic, sort of a laconic figure. And seeing him in Doctor Who, I mean, he's got that sort of personality, which I think if he could bring to bear as the part of the devil in The Festive, I mean, it would be the icing on the cake for me. But
especially with that weird hairdo he has and that funny smirk.
Yeah,
that would
he
be
has
the
a
devil.
certain presence in front of the camera, which a lot of actors don't.
Give him top hat, and he'll be just give him his line. Top hat in the script. He's fine. He's cast.
Oh, he's absolutely brilliant. But yes, I mean, when I was writing it, I mean, I kept seeing him walk out of Charing Cross with the snow coming down, dressed in their Astrakhan coat, you know, with his patent leather shoes and his leather gloves, and sort of just looking up and taking it all in. And of course, he has this tendency in the book just to keep raising one eyebrow like that. And of course, it's to me, it's magical. It really is magical, because
it's really funny
I've written it in such a way you feel as though you're there while he's actually dealing with all these dispossessed in his own inimitable way. And I've tried to make it amusing, fun, and a real treat to read. But as I say, it will be great. I mean, I actually went up London when I first got my free copies, and I took a copy of the book to the theatre, in Panton Street up London, where David was actually appearing, the Harold Pinter Playhouse. And I thought it would be a simple case of just going round to the stage door, leaving it for him, and then he would get it. But when I arrived at the theatre, there was this guy. He must have been about 6'4", and he was built like the side of a house. And he said, "What do you want?" And I said, "Oh, I've got this for David." And anyway, he looked at me and he said, "I've got to see it." I didn't know he was his minder. I thought he was somebody queuing up waiting to get in. So I told him in no uncertain way that he wasn't going to get hold of a copy of the book come hell or high water, and then promptly walk round to the stage entrance only to find this guy standing there waiting for me. So I had to explain what it was all about. But anyway.
Yes, I found out the hard way too. You need a publicist, and the publicist who knows, and your publicist has to know his publicist.
Yeah, they've got to be in the know.
It has to be gifted in such a manner that it is not contrary to the taxation or any other ethics. You know what I mean? Any other ethics. So it has to go through all the right hands and say, this might be something for you to consider in the future, you know, future project, whatever, question mark. There's all these things you have to do to get through the invisible barrier, because there are, I suppose, lots of people lining up to try and do the same thing. I remember an interview with Sir David Niven when David Niven was back doing A Christmas Carol, and people were dropping scripts off for him all the time, he said. And it piled up to the point where the publicist was come in and say, "Nope, you can't touch that." You know, got to make sure there's no gifts, no women's photographs. You know, all the scandals. Scandal sheets are waiting for you. You know,
I haven't tried that yet.
No, but you know what I mean. The scandal sheets are waiting for an actor to trip up.
Yeah, but I don't even know if David ever got a copy of the book.
No,
I did get the
probably be in his public. It would probably go to his publicist or his agent. And
well, I got Austin McCauley to send his agent a copy, but you never hear anything, so you don't know. But
that's
I'm
another thing too.
Yeah, I said I'm just waiting for Oprah Winfrey to review it on her program.
I've been through that too. You speak to people and say, "No, look, I'm sorry, it's ethics." It's like, you know, they can't promise you that they even have the time, and given the volume of stuff they get. Yeah.
You just need to rubber the green. At the end of the day, I mean, all of us.
I'm pretty sure a lot of it is, the green, which I'm sorely lacking right now.
All we just do throughout the day, and we just carry on and hope for the best.
Yep. Now, you mentioned the book earlier. Do you have a favorite author or writer or particular book?
Many. I mean, I would say my favorite books are, first of all, A Christmas Carol and Wind in the Willows, which I personally think are the two greatest books ever written. And it's not unusual to see me reading a copy of A Christmas Carol in July, because I've read it dozens of times, and it is, I mean, for those people out there who have never read it, it's about the redemption, obviously, of Scrooge. But the writing, the quality of writing from Charles Dickens is second to none.
That's the reason why.
And again,
I know it's not popular these days, but they say a lot of people call him a dead old white man. But that dead old white man kicked off a lot of the love of literature for so many people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and the quality of his writing. I mean, I have a great liking for writers, not of the modern era, but I mean, I have a great liking for H.P. Lovecraft, Clark Ashton Smith. I mean, if you read any of Clark Ashton Smith, who was around at the same time as H.P. Lovecraft, the quality of his writing, I mean, he was such a wordsmith. And you literally, you're reading through his short stories and you come across words which you've never encountered before. You're constantly looking them up. And to me, I mean, he was just a past master. But I mean, I also like Piers Anthony, the Xanth series. well, I think he wrote about 50, 60 books. And Alan Dean Foster.
I know of Alan Dean Foster. For most people who do not know, is allegedly the master behind the original Star Wars trilogy script. The script doctor.
Yes. Whether there's any truth in that, I don't know. But I mean,
but the rumor is that he script doctored, yes, the original trilogy to the masterpiece, and later adapted the Lucas notes into a book. And since then, he has adapted probably well over 100 movies.
Yeah.
And recently had to sue Disney and then settle for $1 million settlement because they weren't paying royalties.
I'd be happy with that.
But still, if they settled, it was a much bigger figure.
Yes, you can guarantee it. It's always the case, isn't it?
But yes, he's probably the modern Dickens, I would think.
But of course, Piers Anthony also wrote Alien, didn't he? Well, no, Alan Dean Foster. Alan Foster.
Yes, he is credited as one of the, I think, last. Of course, you've got Ridley Scott first, but yes, he is credited on a few. But still, as a writer, I suppose that's the cross we bear. Is we're not in Edgar Allan Poe's time where a writer is the credited artist. That it's now the director, the producer, and the actor, isn't it?
Seems to be the case, yes. Yeah. But I'd be happy just to be able to just sell a few copies of this book.
Absolutely.
My ambitions aren't great. I just like people to be able to say, yes, I've read it, either I like it or I don't. But, coming back to what we were saying earlier, people have got to be aware of the fact that it's there before they can comment on it.
Exactly.
This is what I find most frustrating.
Quick shout out to the men's room. I do a show with them actually yesterday with them over at the men's room. Where else do you draw inspiration?
To a great extent. I mean, I know it sounds a strange thing, but I will get an idea. It will just pop into my head from nowhere in particular. And then I'll just sort of sit in front of my computer, and then I'll go into a sort of almost a reverie where I'm totally oblivious to virtually anything other than the idea. And then as I do that, I'll get ideas sort of popping in from all angles. And then if I find that the story is not panning out as well as I want it to, or perhaps in the direction I feel it ought to go, when I go to bed, I'll just pose that question to myself before I go to sleep. Please give me a solution to this problem. And the following morning I'll wake up, and invariably what will happen is I'll get another series of ideas coming along. So I find the actual storyline just continues. Regarding inspiration, it's not something which has ever caused me a problem, to be honest. I mean, in that respect, I've been very, very fortunate. But I also think when you're writing about something which is dear to your heart, and you're not writing for someone else, they give you a commission to do it, where you're obliged to write about, say, a particular genre or a topic, which really is just not you. As I say, if you write about something which is something you love, it's 100% easier to do that, because it becomes a joy, and you can sit down and it will flow. You know yourself, when you're actually writing and it's flowing, there's no better experience. It's just wonderful.
I know the feeling. I have heard a number of people say it, and just to know that that joy, if you know what I mean, when You are connecting the characters, you're connecting the dots, and it doesn't matter that the nuances are missed sometimes, just that
No,
you
because
know
you can go
you've
back.
actually done it. Yes, that you go
Yeah.
back and you go, I see it, this feels right, this is flowing, this is exciting.
And you
And
can't type fast enough.
yes, yes.
I mean, it doesn't
Where else?
happen very often. It's quite an uphill struggle. Very often when you're writing, as you know, it's a bit like going up a hill with a heavy weight on your back on roller skates. But you get through it. You get through
That's
it.
called the first draft.
Yes.
And
But as I say, Festive, I rewrote 15 times until I said, that's it, I can do no more.
yes,
And then you move on to the second one.
absolutely. I'm on my fourth book now. Where else do you draw inspiration?
Well, as I say, I generally don't. I mean, I might pick up a book because, as I say, coming back to what I was saying earlier, I have a great love of London and the history of London, which goes back to Roman times. And I'm fairly au fait with everything, even the original London Bridge, where they had before it was burnt down. I mean, they had things on it like ale houses, a church, and this is on a bridge crossing the Thames. I mean, if anybody wants to do a bit of research on the original London, I'm talking about the one that burnt down in the 10th century. I'm talking about the second one, which was rebuilt. But I mean, it was a whole community in its own right, and it was just a bridge crossing the Thames, and they had bakers, and they had all sorts of things on it. And of course, because they got all these different establishments on the bridge itself, you could only go one way at any one time. So if you had a horse and cart, you couldn't sort of pass anybody coming in the opposite direction. They had to wait for you to cross before they allowed someone to come the other way. You know, and it's just London in particular. I mean, I find living in London, it gives me inspiration, it's not unusual for me to jump on the train, 20 minutes, I'm at Charing Cross Station, and I'll just come out of the station and just set off and just walk. I could walk along the South Bank, you know, I could walk along the North Bank and go to the House of Parliament and just take in the general ambience. And this is what I find gives me inspiration. Just having a love of the place I actually live in.
Well, London, briefly, is the birthplace of many things, from mercantile trade, modern banking, the police force, firefighting, patrol boats.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you're aware.
Fires from rivers, pumping.
Yeah, the original river
management,
police on the
water management,
Thames, they actually were 30. They came along 30 years before the Metropolitan Police.
Yes.
You know, the police who were actually going up and down in boats.
Yes,
it's quite scary.
Yeah, the Peelers, J.D. Peeler, and he to stop the robberies of the boats at night.
That's
the
right.
barges.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
And of course, we've covered a lot, but is there any one specific piece of advice you would give to a new writer?
Knowing what I now know, I suppose I would say no, don't. It's a bit like the old adage, don't put your daughter on the stage, Mrs. Worthington, because it is such an immense undertaking. I mean, having a love of writing and being able to sit down and produce something of worth in itself is a very difficult thing. And it's only when you actually go on Twitter and you realize just how many people are doing this, you know, and as it says in the Bible, of the printing of books, there is without end. And it's only when you see the countless thousands out there, it really brings it home to you. I don't think I'm the best of persons to give advice on any up and coming writers. It's something that's either in your soul or it isn't. It's not something you can sort of just pick up and say, oh, I'll do this for a bit. I've been doing this for 40 years. And a lot of what I've done and produced has just been left on the shelf because nobody wants it. So then you move on to the next thing, and then you move on to the next thing, and you do it because you have a love of it. But you know, But
just
for anybody who's
just ask any
writing and
writer.
they want to be a writer, you just hang in there and you just don't give up. You can't afford to give up because there's somebody else behind you waiting to overtake you all the time.
Any business.
Yeah, that's
any
right.
endeavor. My father was an engineer, and but because his engineering wasn't recognized, because he did mechanical engineering at a technical college, not a university, they didn't recognize him as an engineer. But so be it. It didn't stop him from eventually being, for at least for a while, being a consulting engineer, 2 engineers who knew less than him about mechanics. Because that's the thing with writing. There's always going to be somebody better than you. There's always going to be somebody more prolific than you. And I'm not sure who said it, but somebody said, if you want to write a book, first write a library.
Yeah, that just about sums it up, I think. And I think I more or less have. But as I say, the more you write, the easier it gets. There's no two ways about it. But ultimately, it doesn't matter how many books you produce, whether you produce a masterpiece and an all-time classic, you've got to have that little bit of luck. And if you don't have that little bit of luck, it's like, I was in the acting profession for years, only I was backstage. And I saw so many actors and actresses who were absolutely brilliant at their trade, but they never made it. And on the other side of the coin, you come across people who have made it because they've got a very good agent, and they're not very good. You need that luck. It doesn't matter what you do. You've got to have a bit of divine help, I think. There's got to be somebody who's willing to give you a bit of a nudge. Once you have that, then hopefully everything falls into place.
Well, some people say the luck comes from below, not from above. With some.
Yeah, well, read about my book with the devil and you'll find out.
Yes. Now, of course, you know this, I know this, but a lot of the people out there who writing is maybe, I would say, I'm not saying the most stressful thing. Obviously, there's way more stressful professions, but if compared to an accountant, I would say which I've actually done, and is way more. It's way more stressful to write a book than it is to do somebody's taxes.
I've never found that, to be honest. I've never ever found that, purely and simply because I'm not writing for a deadline. I've only ever written for me, and I do it because, if you like, it's my hobby, and it's a hobby of which I absolutely love. I mean, it was George Bernard Shaw who said, "Happy is the man who makes his living through his hobby." And if I could do that, even though I'm now retired, even if I could only earn a small amount, I would be more than happy.
Yes,
to me, that's what it's all about. There's no stress involved.
No, right. That's amazing. You've reached that point. I think that's where Bernard Shaw did too, where he said his measure of success was able to go out into the garden and type.
Yes. That's what it's all about. I mean, if I ever found I was suffering stress through writing, I'd stop. Simple as that.
Well, don't forget, he used to write scripts to a deadline, and I think when he achieved his greatest success is when he stopped writing scripts for other people.
Perhaps. But as I say, I don't ever want it to become a drudge, because
I'm not saying a drudge. I'm saying, the mental stress, the accumulation. But if I'm taking your word for it that you're able to achieve the reverie that most of us are still looking for.
Yeah, I mean, literally. I mean, I just sit there and I just look into the screen, and I don't go into a trance. I mean, don't get me wrong by any means, but it's something which I'm able to do mainly in the morning because my brain is fresh. And then I just find, if I can just block things out, which is not difficult, because I've just got the theme of the story in mind, then I find ideas tend to come at me from all angles, and then I can sort of make some sort of sense of it and sort of unscramble them all, and then I start making notes. And then once I've got that particular chapter, I then just sit and write it, and then I do with the next one and the next one and the next one. So when I actually write something like this, I don't sit down and I know what's going to happen from beginning to end. I just have a general theme running through my head. And as I say, so far, I mean, it's panned out okay. But as I say, I'm currently on the 5th book. So I'm hoping that this one will take off, and Austin Macaulay picks up on the 2nd one, which is A Festive Verisimilitude. And then I've got A Festive Anachronism. And they're all different. They're all different. I mean, it would have been easy to have just done an extension of the first, with the devil and, you know, dealing with people in London. But this, I'm trying to make everyone different from the last one. I mean, in the 3rd one, it's a mystery right from beginning to end, and even the devil is perplexed. And the 4th one is a whodunit set in a public school. So they are all different. And then the 5th one I'm writing at the moment is called A Series of Festive Covenants. And it's about people who have made pacts with the devil. And of course, he's got all these written down and what have you, and he's calling them all in. So again, that's something totally different. But again, I like to introduce a certain modicum of humor into it, because to me, that is the most difficult thing to write. I mean, I could write horror novels, I could write romance, erotica, I could write science fiction, but I don't want to do any of that. I want to do something which appeals to me, because that to me is what writing is all about. I do it.
I understand, because I write mature content because I'm sick of children's books being passed off as adult material.
Yeah.
You know, where, you know, hello, Diggs. But I understand everybody has their approach to different topics. And I think writing what you know is probably the most common and probably first thing you should always do as a writer. There's no faking it until you're making it. You can't fake a script. You can't fake being a script writer. You cannot fake your way through a trilogy. I suppose you can. You can only go so far, though, hiring ghostwriters before somebody will sit you down behind a desk and in an office somewhere writing scripts, and soon you're halfway through the movie and it's cancelled because they find out you're not a good writer, and they go find the ghostwriter who had to take him on, because they eventually find out, you know.
No, it's inevitable. But I mean, I personally can't think of anything worse sitting there behind at someone's desk trying to turn something out. I mean, to me, that's when the pressure and the stress would come into its own, and the magic would disappear. Because to me, it would simply become, you could pay me $10 million and I wouldn't want to do it, because, you know, I'm now of an age where time is of the essence, and I've got to get as much pleasure out of my writing as I can. And this is what I do. I mean, I write for me. I write things which appeal to me. I write books which I would like to pick off a shelf and think, yeah, this is appealing, you know, and I get a great deal of enjoyment out of reading this. To me, that's what life is about.
Yes, and
I mean, I wrote a book.
Youngins, take note, and stop burning the candles at both ends and start enjoying life.
I mean, I do have a lot of books on Amazon, which I wrote years and years ago. I wrote one called The Lost Oracle, and it's about a young lad called Jeremy Bennett who has no magic, but he gets like whipped into this magical world where you got wizards and dwarves and various creatures and what have you. And I finished that, and I sent it up. For years, I was sending it up to publishers, and until it got to the stage where it's, I mean, I wrote this when J.K. Rowling was in ankle socks, and I was still sending it up many years later. And I got fed up of getting responses too Harry Potterish. And I think, well, this woman was in ankle socks when I wrote this, and you lose heart, and it makes you want to give up. So you just put it on the back burner, and then you move on to something else. But I mean, I wrote 3 in that series. I wrote The Sorcerer's Dog's Body, which is for young teens, and it's all very tongue-in-cheek humor, set in magical worlds. But again, it was just writing things which appealed to me and my sense of humor. And this is what I've always done, and this is what I will continue to do.
Lastly, what do you like doing when you're not writing?
Reading, I think. I am a great reader, and I will accumulate loads and loads of books, read them, and then I will take them all to the charity shop, and then I will replace them with other books. Conan Doyle, Sherlock Holmes, and what have you. And then you've got so many spin-offs, which are not part of the canon, written by other authors, which, I mean, I've got most of them. I've read most of them. Agatha Christie, I'm a great love of Agatha Christie. So, but I tend to find that most of my reading is of bygone days, writers, of like Vonnegut and what have you, and various other science fiction writers of the 70s and what have you, Isaac Asimov. I'm not a great one for modern day writers, because, I mean, I think you're just overwhelmed by the sheer volume of books available. It's difficult to know what to pick up and sort of take home. So I tend to sort of sheer away from them. But yeah, I mean, on the whole, I like reading, walking. I've got a small garden which I potter about in. I'm a qualified carpenter, so I mean, I've got a workshop, so I'm always pottering about in there. Yeah, so yes, it's good. It's nice.
Okay, where can people find your book? And I know you're going to say, but there is an Amazon link, is there not?
Amazon, yeah. Yeah, you just go on Amazon and you just put in A Festive Juxtaposition. It'll come up on Amazon. It's also, you can obtain it from my publisher, Austin Macaulay. You just go on that and just put it in, and it will come up and you can buy it. And I'm told, if you just go into any bookshop, W.H. Smith's, Waterstones, Barnes and Noble, and you just give them the actual name of the book, they will order it for you. So yeah, I mean, there are a number of outlets.
Yes, I'm on Barnes and Noble too, but I believe only through their online ordering process, not through their physical bookshop.
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. I suppose the main outlet is Austin Macaulay and Amazon.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's any out here in Australia or over in the US, but I do know, at least in the UK, there is somewhere a shelf of your book on it, because Austin Macaulay are not
I hope so.
shy. They're not shy. They're
it up.
Yes,
bought it.
they're not shy. They will have people spreading every author in as many of their authors' books as they can, because that's their bread and butter. I mean, they're not really a conglomerate or part of a conglomerate like some of these people today. I mean, if I was to be published by them, it would be awesome.
Yeah, it's just getting the momentum going.
It is.
It's probably a bit like pushing a car which has broken down. I mean, you exert most of your energy just getting it moving, and then it's a lot easier. But I think, coming back to what we were saying, you've got to have that little bit of luck, even with getting it off the ground.
Absolutely. Like I said, I've had a few phone calls, but before the show, that it's getting that momentum, and then that's the thing. Publishers like momentum. They like have it. They probably have so many people to deal with. I wouldn't like to be in their shoes. I wouldn't want to be one of their readers, having to decide which of the few lucky people each year get chosen.
You just keep your fingers crossed and hope for the best. As I say, you assume that just being published is like the hurdle that you have to surmount. And it's an enormous shock to the system when you realize that there's a bigger one ahead of you, and that's promoting. And I spend a lot
promotion,
of time.
sequels, then you've got appearances, book tours, and last, if it ever gets picked up by anybody, you have to consult.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do that, but as I say,
But I'm just saying, people
it's
think
getting
it's
it off the
writing.
ground.
I think people think of writing as, oh, here's my manuscript and it's done.
That's right. Yes, I'm moving on to the next one.
Yes. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks everybody for coming. Please like, share, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. Links will be in the description below, not just for myself, but for Paul. Thank you all for coming. Bye, everybody.
And thank you very much. It's been pleasant talking to you.